Hello everybody, my name is Kirti Sri Ganapati and today I will be presenting on the topic Scrum method. In the next few minutes, we will be looking into Scrum principles, Scrum main characteristics and processes, Scrum team members, roles of Scrum team members, sprint fundamentals, Scrum software engineering model, backlogs, real-world examples, SWOT analysis, and some references. Scrum is not only one of the most widely used software development method in Agile world, but also one of the most popular frameworks. Scrum was born out of manufacturing in 1986, that is early 1900s, and subsequently extended by the software development industry as an agile methodology. It was countered to establish the waterfall style of project management processes. Ken Schauber and Jeff Sutherland developed the Scrum method in the early 1900s, as already discussed. The Scrum method was evolved somewhat over the years. People often think of the Scrum and the Agile as the same thing because Scrum is centered around continuous improvement, which is the core principle of Agile. However, Scrum is a framework for getting the work done, whereas Agile is more of a mindset. You can really go Agile as it takes dedication from the whole team to change the way they think about delivering value to your customers. But you can use a framework like Scrum to help you start thinking that the way we do work on projects and to the practice of building Agile principles to everyday work. The Scrum framework is basically heuristic. It is based on the continuous learning and adjustments to fluctuating factors. It acknowledges that the team doesn't really need to know everything at the start of a project, and we will evolve slowly through experience. Scrum is structured to help teams naturally adapt to changing conditions and the user requirements, with reprioritization built into the process and short release cycles. So, what is Scrum and what isn't Scrum? Before we get into the Scrum principles, let me just tell you what exactly means by Scrum and how we have a predefined notion of what is not a Scrum. At the high level, Scrum is lightweight and easy to understand. But when you really get into the details, it is actually difficult to master. Scrum is a framework and not a process like Agile, which we already discussed. Scrum does not tell you how to do things. It tells you what needs to be done and figure out how it has to be done. To make sure, to make it more confusing, actually, Scrum is not literal. We must modify what it says to match our circumstances. Scrum is a well-balanced framework that all parts need to be in order to be effective. Let us move on to the Scrum principles. There are 6 principles under Scrum: empirical process control, self-organization, collaboration, value-based prioritization, time boxing, and iterative development. What are these principles? We will be seeing every one of them shortly. Let us go to the first principle, empirical process control. So this principle emphasizes the core philosophy of Scrum based on 3 main ideas. The first one is transparency, second is inspection, and third is adaptation. In Scrum, actually, the decisions are made based on the observation and experimentation rather than detailed upfront planning. Everything is not pre-planned in the very beginning. Empirical process control relies on the three main ideas, that is transparency, inspection, and adaptation, which we saw. The first one is transparency, which allows all the facets of any Scrum process to be observed by anyone. This promotes an easy and transparent flow of information throughout the organization and creates an open work culture. In Scrum, transparency is depicted through artifacts, meetings, and information radiators. What are these artifacts? What does it mean during meetings, having transparency during meetings, and how or what does it mean by having an information radiator? So eventually we will be seeing the artifacts include project vision statement, prioritizing the product backlog, and release planning. The meetings would be consisting of sprint meetings and daily stand-up meetings. Finally, the information boards would be the burn down chart and Scrum board. We will be seeing an example of all these very soon. Let us move on to the second phase, that is inspection. Inspection in Scrum is depicted through usage of common Scrum board and other information radiators, which we saw in the previous slide. Collection of feedback from the customers and the stakeholders during the development of Epic, user story, and backlogs. Inspection and approval of the deliveries by product owner and the customer to demonstrate and validate the sprint process. Moving to the third one, that is adaptation. Adaptation happens as the Scrum core team and the stakeholders learn through the transparency and inspection, then adapt to make by improving in the work they are doing. Adaptation in Scrum is depicted through stand-up meetings, constant risk identification, change requests, retrospective meetings, and retrospective project meetings. The retrospective meetings could be of two types. One is during the sprint meeting and one is during this project meeting. Let us move to the second principle under Scrum, that is self-organization. This principle mainly focuses on today's workers who deliver significantly greater value when organized, and this results in better team building and shared ownership, and also innovative and creative environment which is more conducive for the growth. Scrum believes that employees are self-motivated and seek to accept greater responsibility. So they deliver much greater value when self-organized. The preferred leadership style in Scrum is seen as the servant leadership, which emphasizes the results by focusing on the needs of the Scrum team. The key benefits of self-organization are team in buy-in and shared ownership, motivation, and innovative and creative environment. Moving to the third principle, that is collaboration. This principle focuses on three core dimensions related to collaborative work, that is awareness, articulation, and appropriation. So it also advocates that project management as a shared value creation process with team working and interacting together to deliver the greatest value. Collaboration in Scrum refers to the Scrum core team working together and interfacing with the stakeholders to create and validate the deliverables of project to meet the goals. It is important to know that difference between cooperation and collaboration. Here we can see that the core dimension includes awareness, articulation, and appropriation, and some of the benefits are minimization of change requests, risk mitigation, increase in efficiency, and finally continuous improvement. Let us move to the next principle, that is value-based prioritization. This principle highlights that the focus of Scrum is to deliver maximum business value from beginning early in the project and continuing throughout. Prioritization can be benefited as or defined as determining the order and separating that must be done now from what has to be done at a later stage. Do it right now. Scrum uses value-based prioritization as one of the core principles that drives the structure and functionality of the entire Scrum framework. It benefits the project through adaptability and iterative development of the project and service. More significantly, Scrum aims at delivering a value or service to the customer on early and continuous basis. Here we can see the three factors which are considered during prioritization. The first one is value, second is risk, and third is dependency. Prioritization results in deliverables that satisfy the requirements of the customer and with the objective of delivering maximum business value to the least amount of time. So having a maximum value in minimal time is the entire goal of value-based prioritization. There are again, you can see 4 different quadrants which we have come across, I'm sure. The first one is urgent and important, urgent and not urgent and not important, and important but not urgent. So based on this prioritization, one particular project team can choose the tasks. Let us move to the next principle, that is time boxing. Time boxing describes how time is considered a limiting constraint in Scrum, and it is used to help efficiently and effectively to manage project planning and execution. Time-boxed elements in Scrum include sprints, daily stand-up meetings, sprint meeting, and sprint review meeting. So these particular artifacts we have already listed, and those artifacts would be belonging under time-boxed frames. So coming to a real-world example of time boxing. So if a particular task is assigned to an employee A and that task has to be finished within, say, suppose 15 hours of time. So how well employee A prioritizes his or her tasks and time boxes the effort into the development. Scrum treats time as one of the important constraints in managing a project. To address the constraint of time, Scrum introduces a concept called the time boxing, which proposes fixing a certain amount of time for each process and activity in a Scrum project. The benefits of time boxing are efficient development process, less overheads, high velocity for teams. We will be seeing some of these charts very soon, how a velocity chart would look like for a particular team. Moving to iterative development. This principle defines iterative development and emphasizes how to better manage changes and build products more satisfactorily to a customer. The Scrum framework is it's actually driven by the goal of delivering maximum business value in the least amount of time. Some of the benefits of iterative development are: it allows for the course correction as all the people involved get better understanding. The time and effort required to reach the final endpoint is greatly reduced, and the team produces deliverables that are better suited for the final business environment. So here we can see, the different phases and processes for Scrum. The 5 different phases are initiation, planning and estimation, implementation, review and retrospect, and finally release. So under each phase, what are the different processes which come under this phase? Under initiation, we can see that there are 6 processes. The first one is creating a project vision, having a goal or a purpose for that particular project. Then second is identifying the Scrum Master and stakeholders who are the stakeholders for this particular project. Identifying the right stakeholders is very important. Third is from forming a Scrum team, developing of epics, creating prioritized product backlog, and under the last phase under initiation is the release planning. Under planning and estimation, we have creating of user stories. So user stories are derived from the epic, and epics are under the product backlogs. We will be seeing a visual demonstration of how we pull up the user stories and tasks from epic. So moving to the planning and estimation, continuing to that, after creation of user stories, we have approval, estimation, and commitment from the user stories. Creation of the tasks, estimation, that is the effort estimation for tasks, having the time boxed framework, that is having only 10 hours per task or 20 hours or whatever is the estimation for that particular task. Then is creation of sprint backlog. Under implementation, we have creation of deliverables, conducting daily stand-ups, then grooming the prioritized backlog. So under implementation, when actually the tasks will be implemented from moving in progress to done, we will be reprioritizing our product backlog, that is reiterate, okay, what are the newer priorities, which task has to be, which epic, which user story has to be taken next by which team member. All those responsibilities will be taken care by the Scrum Master. Under the fourth phase, that is review and retrospect, we have conducting of Scrum of Scrums. What is Scrum of Scrums? How do we do it? Who all are involved? All these will be covered very soon. Next is demonstration and validation of sprint, and we have sprint retrospective. So in sprint retrospect, we can have different, the entire team would be in a meeting room. Is it virtual or in person? It could be virtual or in person. In the sprint retrospect, for the entire sprint, which all activities have been done, what activity went wrong, and what could be the possible action items which a particular team has to take care so that your sprint goals are achieved. At the beginning of sprint, since we have a project vision or sprint goal, if that goal has not been achieved, what has been the roadblock for it, and what is the action item for that team to get over through it. And in the finally coming to the release phase, we have the shipment of deliverables, and finally it is for the entire project that there is a retrospective. So here in the previous phase, point number 17, it is retrospective with respect to a sprint, and here it is the retrospective meeting with respect to the entire project. Coming to the next point, that is the Scrum process. As we already discussed in the previous slide, we will be having a complete product backlog, and for that, whatever in the sprint backlog, we will be having the features which are assigned to a sprint. Backlog are items which are expanded by the team, and for, say, suppose this particular sprint consists of 30 days, the the new task or feature will be taken and it would be developed, and if any improvements are there, those would be done, and finally the new functionality is released at the end of the Scrum. So at every day the team meets for a daily stand-up meeting or daily Scrum meeting. It is also abbreviated as DSM. The team members would be describing three major points. That is, what have you done yesterday? What have that particular team member has done yesterday? Are there any roadblocks for today? And what is the plan for today? Or if there are any issues or blockages for whatever task has been done. And finally, is there any, what is the plan for the current day? So here, this says that what have I done since last Scrum meeting, what I plan to do before the next, and finally the issues or blocks if which has to be resolved before completion. So the Scrum process would be involving of having the planning, building, testing, and review, and the sprint one is released. Similarly, at the end of each sprint, all the Scrum process development activities would be done, and that particular sprint is released. Finally, we have the final sprint. So here is a quick comparison between waterfall model, iterative model, and Scrum model. Here in the waterfall model, the requirement, planning, coding, testing, release, all the phases would be scaled out from the beginning to end without any feedback loop. The waterfall model, as we know, that is linear and non-iterative. And iterative waterfall model would be having done all the phases in sequential manner, but in couple of iterations. Here you can see that there are 2 iterations for this particular example. Whereas in Scrum model, you can see that all the phases are done for each of the sprint, and the release cycles are much longer for that. So this helps in having additional feedback loops and improvements which are received from the customer, and those improvements would be implemented in the coming or following sprints. Moving to the Scrum team members, the roles of Scrum team members. In the picture, we can see that the Scrum team mainly consists of Scrum Master, Product Owner, and Development team. So apart, who would be interacting with this Scrum team is SME. SME stands for Subject Matter Expert. The Business Owner and Product Owner would be interacting with the stakeholders. Stakeholders would be interacting with the business owner as well, and partially Scrum Master would be interacting with the business owner here. So the development team doesn't have a direct contact or interaction or communication with the stakeholders and the business owners. So we have seen previously that the Scrum team consists of 3 major roles, that is the Product Owner, Scrum Master, and Development team. So because of the self-organization and continuous improvement, the 3 roles give a minimum definition of responsibility and accountability to allow the team members to be more effective during the work. So it doesn't provide a framework which actually saying the famous quote of having one size fits for all model for the teams to work within it. Let us take an example. If the team is working on web insurance application, they will need people who know the technology, the back-end systems, and the business domain. If on actually the other hand, the team is working on the next gen of say XYZ insurance or XYZ WebEx, the skills needed would be very different. So what an insurance company would be needing, what skills would an insurance company would need may not be the same for a healthcare or a graphic designing or a game designing team. So it actually gets harder and more complex as the problem a team is trying to solve gets different or varies. So here we can see the product owner is the holder of the product value. He determines what needs to be done and he sets the priority to deliver the highest value, he or she. The development team is actually a self-organizing group. That is, it takes on and determines how to deliver chunks of work in frequent increments. And Scrum Master protects the Scrum process and he or she prevents the distractions. Let us see all these roles in a little more detail. So the development team, here you can see the different properties of a self-development team. That is, it is self-organized. The team has to design, develop, test, user experience, etc. All these features or responsibilities are consisting for our development team. It consists of the people that actually do the work. Maybe at first we may think that development team just means software engineers, but it is not always the case. According to the Scrum guide, the development team can be comprised of all kind of people. So it can include designers or writers, programmers, etc. The development team should be able to self-organize so that we can make decisions to get the work done. Maybe we can think of development team as similar to a production support team that is called in during the night because something just went wrong. The development team, like the production support team, can fix decisions and can make those decisions, deliver the values to the problem, etc. Self-organization doesn't actually mean disrespecting the organization as well, but rather it empowers the people closest to the work so that we doesn't face much more problems at a later stage. The development team's responsibilities includes delivering the work throughout the sprint. That of course, since Scrum follows sprint, so we have to be, the development team has to deliver everything through the sprint. And it also has to ensure the transparency during the sprint in the daily stand-up meeting. So the daily Scrum provides transparency to work, and it provides the dedicated place for the team to seek help or talk about the success and highlight the issues if any person is facing. So in the daily stand-up meetings, there are small team awards or pat on the back awards if a particular team member has performed really well during that particular sprint. So the team actually celebrates both successes and failures, and those things would be discussed during the daily stand-up. So here, this was an interesting picture which I found, which says that the Scrum myth is Scrum developer means that only coders can be a part of Scrum team. As I have already mentioned that Scrum development team doesn't necessarily consist of engineers. We can have designers, writers, etc. Moving to the next one is the product owner. He or she actually sets the clear direction for a particular project. Agile teams are by design flexible and responsive. It is a responsibility of the product owner to ensure that they are delivering the most value. The business is represented by the product owner who tells that the development is very important and that has to be delivered on time. Trust between these two roles is very crucial. The product owner should not only understand the customer, but also he or she has to support the vision and for the value of Scrum, and also support the team who is responsible, whom he is responsible for. The product owner has to balance the needs of other stakeholders in the organization as well. So it is a very big responsibility. He has to take all the inputs and prioritize the work. Probably this is more important responsibility because conflicting priorities, unclear directions will not only reduce the effectiveness of the team, but also break the important trust relationship that the business has to deal with the development team. Agile teams are designed to inspect and adapt. That means that a change in priority may lead to a massive change to the team structure, work products, as well as the end result. It is therefore crucial for Scrum team members to be successful, and only one person sets the priority, and he is a product owner. Again, there is a small myth which says that the product owner creates all the requirements, writes all the acceptance criteria, and builds all the stories. It is definitely not true. The responsibilities are shared by product owner and the Scrum Master, and the product owner also takes input from the development team for design a couple of, not everything maybe, but a couple of features. Moving to the next role, that is the Scrum Master. He or she is a person who holds it all together. In this picture, we can see the different responsibilities of a Scrum Master. So he is responsible for gluing or sticking everything together, ensuring that the Scrum is done very well. Probably in practical terms, it means that he or she help the product owner to define the value, the development team to deliver the value. He is kind of a bridge who supports the development team and the product owner. He is also known as the servant leader, which we saw in a couple of previous slides, which not only describes the supportive role of the leadership, but also describes that when they do that on a day-to-day basis. They serve the product owner by helping them better understand the product and develop or managing the backlog, and then help them plan to work with the team and break down that work to deliver. It has to be done in the most effective way, of course. So the Scrum Master also serves the organization. So every team would be having a Scrum Master, and he would be focusing on the transparency, empiricism, the Scrum values, self-organization of the team, protecting the team, and removing the blockers. One particular Scrum myth which is shown here is the Scrum Master has to run the daily Scrum. In fact, the Scrum Master does not run any of the events, just ensures that they happen and they are successful. So it is the entire team's responsibility to run the daily Scrum. It is if say one particular day a Scrum Master of team A is not present, or if he or she is on leave, it is the team's responsibility to come forward and do the daily stand-up. Moving to the Scrum artifacts. Some of the 6 main artifacts which are shown, that is product backlog, sprint planning meeting, sprint backlog, sprints, which includes the burn down charts and the daily Scrum meeting, the finished work, and finally the sprint review and retrospective. Let us see one by one about these Scrum artifacts. The first one is sprint backlog, the product backlog. The product backlog is a list of new features or enhancements, bug fixes, tasks, and work requirements which needs to be done to build a product. It is compiled from the input sources like customer support, competitor analysis, then market demands, the general business analysis. The product backlog is a live artifact, that is, it is updated on demand as new information is available. It is cross-team backlog, that is maintained and curated by the product owner between the sprint cycles and as the new features or ideas arise. It contains tasks where once it is active in the sprint but deprioritized and moved back to the backlog. So if the priority is low, say suppose story 1 which had priority low would be moved back to the backlog. So the product backlog works on priorities. So from the product backlog, you can see that the stories are moved to sprint backlog. Let us see what the responsibility or what consists of sprint backlog. Sprint backlog is a set of product backlog tasks that have been promoted to the development during the next product increment. Sprint backlogs are created by the development teams to plan deliverables for future increments, and it details the work required to create an increment. It consists of who has to be done, how it has to be done, and how long or what in that should be done. And finally, that would be given out as the output or final delivered feature. So in Agile metric, you can see that this is a example of sprint burn down, that is the burn down chart Initially, it started with when the sprint started, the burn down was high, or the story points were high, and eventually, once the features are implemented, the efforts are reducing slowly. The next is epic and release burn down. This is the concept of sprint, how we have burn downs. This is with respect to epic. So here the different legends show that the green one mentions the work completed and blue is the remaining work. So at the starting of the sprint, there are 15 hours or 15 business days of work which is remaining, and finally end of it, it is the work completed is just 4%, or 4% of whatever was initially estimated. Again, this is just an example to show how epic burn down looks like. Next is velocity chart. This is over the range of different sprints in that particular product life cycle. First, in the sprint 1, we can see the committed effort and the completed effort are equal. In the second sprint, whatever is committed was much higher than whatever was completed. And moving to the following sprints, the sprint number 4 and 5, the commitment and the work completed are equal. So whatever was assigned has been completed. So the velocity is good over here, whereas it is degrading in sprint number 2 and 3. This is a control chart where different issues and clusters of issues are shown here. So the standard deviation is marked, and the average and rolling average is shown here. So number of issues below average and number of issues above average are shown, and the timeline is also mentioned over here. This is the cumulative or aggregated diagram of what tasks are in the to-do section, what is completed and what is in progress. So the legends are mentioned accordingly, and how many number of issues are open. So this is one particular link which I found very interesting about learning Scrum using Jira. Jira is a Scrum software. Let me just show that. So how we can have the entire Scrum in just 10 minutes. So this is a very interesting article where we can see how to create a Scrum project in Jira, how to create the user stories or tasks in the backlog, and how to create a sprint. All the step-by-step procedures are shown in the tool Jira. So very soon I will be showing the demo of monday.com. That is also a Scrum tool. So this is how we do it in Jira. How we can see the burn down charts, etc. So this is an article which shows how to view the burn down chart and what exactly means by the different terms in the burn down charts. So we have seen one particular chart previously on how the burn down was initially high and how it would be going down eventually. So how to view the burn down charts are shown over here. Moving on to the Scrum of Scrums. SOS is also known as the Scrum of Scrums. It is the scaled agile technique that offers, it actually offers a way to connect multiple teams. Here we can see team number 1, 2, 3. It connects multiple teams who need to work together to deliver the complex solution. It helps the team members, and it helps in the development and the delivery of complex products through transparency, inspection, and adaptation, which we saw during the Scrum's principles. It will become successful, and it has been proven successful when all the high performing Scrum team members work together on a common goal. They have to trust, they have to respect, and completely all the Scrum masters should be aligned. Larger a team size, the better and greater lines of communication between the team members would be. And at times it becomes harder also when the team size is very big and the project is really complex. So what different things or few different things which can be done during Scrum of Scrums is keeping the meeting minutes to just 15 minutes, establishing a working agreement, then establishing a collective routine or agenda. Finally, it's always better to track and visualize the days until the demo meeting. Usually the demo meetings would be in sprint retrospective or product release retrospective meetings. Now we will be seeing a comparison of Scrum and the traditional project management. Here we can see that Scrum basically emphasizes on people. Traditional project management like waterfall or other methodologies, they focus mainly on the process and how is the documentation, how is the upfront planning. Upfront planning is very low in Scrum, whereas it keeps evolving as and when we get into the project. Here, the upfront planning is very high. Say, suppose waterfall, everything needs to be planned, everything needs to be known very in the very beginning. The customer involvement is high. It varies. So the various parameters are shown over here and how it is compared with respect to Scrum and traditional project management. So return on investment for project which uses Scrum is very high because we will be having minimum MMF, that is minimum marketable features, delivered in quicker iterations and increments, and they would be done in a priority basis. Coming to the SWOT analysis, the strength, weakness, opportunity, and threats are mentioned here. The strength basically, it is used in standard agile management. Weakness would be Scrum team is always needed. Expertise is always needed in having a Scrum team. Opportunities is having new approaches towards the project could be generated due to diverse Scrum team, and some of the threats are mentioned over here. So these are top Scrum tools, and the pricing for it is shown over here. Jira, Target Process, VB5 Scrum, and Yodis, and Monday.com. So this is a comparison of how the top 4 tools are with respect to the usage, and these are the testimonials of users. So here you can see some features like budget management and client portal is not available in Jira, whereas in Monday.com, everything, Kanban board to Gantt chart to client portals, agile methodologies, everything is available in Monday.com. And which all web or OS which it supports is shown. So let us see how to work with Monday.com. So I created a project with CS576 under Monday.com dashboard. So here we can see under project, my dashboard's name is project planning. Sorry, and I have various phases, that is phase 1, phase 2, and future tasks. So under phase 1, we can create multiple tasks and set the priority and owner. Here we have sub items related to it. I can add a sub item, have a description. So yeah, here it is assigned to myself because in my team currently there is only one person, since it is created just for the demo purpose, and I have added the comments here. The priorities can be set here, that is it is high priority, or if I'm stuck on it, or if I'm waiting for a review or working on it, or if it is approved and done. So initially I was stuck, and if I'm done and I click done, and finally the timeline would be updated accordingly. So this is for the various phases, phase 2, and what could be the future tasks. Those are also shown over here. And there could be multiple charts, so that's why there is this search board. We can add the blank boards and new templates and other functionality. This has been a very easy to navigate tool for Scrum, and these are the team members who are available for this particular project. So that is with respect to monday.com. And so coming to the top companies who use Scrum and they have been benefited are Netflix. They have every maintenance for 2 weeks, and the data is shown over here. Adobe, ING is a banking sector, Intel, and even the government uses Scrum. So coming finally to the key takeaways, there are four major takeaways for Scrum which I felt would be: the first one is working on the riskiest or least understood subtask first. The second is trying to provide one or more deliverables every week, that is having sprints like that where we have at the end of sprint a deliverable for sure. A third is communicate as often as possible and as often as needed. The fourth is updating the task list on ongoing basis. So basically having a visual board for not just yourself, for the entire team to know if you're stuck or if you're working on a particular task. These are some of the references which I have used. Thank you. That's all from my side.